Hi. So I've been away from making videos now for a good few months, and I thought that now that I'm getting back to the shop, it would be time to do some work in there, or for the shop as well. We've been living in the house now almost for 2 years, and therefore I've had the shop for almost 2 years, and I thought that it would be time to create some better workspaces now for myself, because I've been thinking of that for a while. Now that I got the dining table done late last year, I think it's time to focus on doing some shop builds, organize the shop, have some place for all the wood and all the tools, and a bit more workshops to work on. So, as you can see, I've already built some of these, but let me show what I did and how.
So, as you've probably seen on many of my previous videos, I've been having wood laying around on the back of the shop just on the floor for quite a long time already. And with small shop, all the floor space is quite valuable, so having some wood laying on the floor isn't the smartest way to use the space. I will also be updating my tool storage. I've been having all the tools on these two shelves that were here when we bought the place. I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it, but as you can see, the place is quite cluttered with all the tools laying on the different shelves. And for myself at least, I think it will work better if I have a dedicated spot for all the tools, because then it makes it easier to come to the shop and start working when I know that everything's nicely on their place. And speaking of tools, with these builds I'm also future-proofing the shop because I've been planning to get some new tools as well. As you can see on this video, and with most of my other videos, when I'm rough cutting the pieces to length, I usually use my circular saw, but I've been thinking and wanting to get myself a miter saw, so I'm also going to create a place for that to have it in the future. But to tackle the first problem in the shop, the wood storage on the floor. I was thinking of a couple of options for the storage, one being a shelving on the wall where I could store all the wood, and the other one being a storage cart, which I ended up choosing because that's an easier way I can move it around and it's more functional for storing sheet goods and just lumber overall, so I think that's a better way for me. I saw a lot of different types of wood carts online, some of them using a lot of plywood on the builds, but I thought that that's kind of waste of materials because at the end of the day I will be storing materials on it, so I don't want to waste a complete sheet or 2 sheets of plywood just on the cart. As Baltic birch plywood is still quite expensive here in Finland at least. But luckily, my father-in-law had some leftover materials from a construction project. He had these 2x2 timber beams and then some faint grade plywood that I've been storing for these projects in mind, and now I finally decided that it's time to start working on these. And as you've seen, there won't be any fancy joinery on these builds because these are shop furniture, so I don't think that that's necessary. But I will be just using glue and mostly some screws and pin nails to hook everything up. For the card, I just created this frame from the 2x2s and then attached some sheets of plywood on the top to create the base for the card. And my plan is to separate the card into 3 sections, one side being storage for plywood and other sheet goods, then the middle section being for long pieces of wood, and then the third section being this cage where I can store all the offcuts that are still usable and not worth throwing away. And with all of this, I don't mean that it's wrong to use hardwoods or make the shop furniture look nice, but for me it doesn't make sense to use hardwoods to build this furniture because it would be quite expensive, and for me woodworking is just a hobby. And at least on the dictionary in Google it says that a hobby is an activity done regularly in one's leisure time for pleasure. And I would say that woodworking is exactly that for me. And on the opposite, it has the job, which has the definition of a paid position of regular employment, which I would say woodworking is not for me because I'm not getting paid anything, and this is just an expense for me, which I think that hobbies should be and are for most of the people. Which brings me back to the topic of materials for shop furniture. I don't say that pieces that are built from hardwoods for the shop don't look nice, but for me, the function is more important than the looks on these things. I want the furniture to be functional and work well for me rather than have it being pricey and nice looking. As I said on the intro of the video that I've been taking some time off from the shop after I finished the dining table last year. The dining table had been this big project on my to-do list for quite a while since we had the small table in the kitchen which we used, and we had been wanting a bigger, more solid table ever since we moved into the house 2 years ago from now. And I think that after I finished the table, I kind of hit this point that I felt that the big thing that I had on my project list was now done, and that kind of made me not want to go to the shop. I had been planning to go in and start building these shop furniture pieces, but I just didn't find the motivation, is probably the best word to describe it. Partly, I think it was also due to the lack of plan for what I'm supposed to do when I go into the shop. I knew that I need to start building these shop furnitures, but I really didn't have a solid plan on where to start or what to do, and that kind of made it easier not to go to the shop. So, after having few months of a break from the shop, I finally decided that I will just go in and for one weekend and just create a plan on what I'm supposed to be building and kind of visualize it for myself on where to start and what the outcome would look like. And I think building these shop furnitures was the best project for that because I really didn't have to worry about how to make the joinery or how to make everything look nice. It was just more of building and getting things done because I can just screw things together and call it a day. So making all these things was quite quick, and I think that was really nice way to start the year in the shop because I could create something and have the end product be ready quite quickly. And with that, I think it's a good time to remind you that if you want to see more videos like this, and I am actually already working on the next project, remember to subscribe to the channel to get notified when a new video comes in. Now that the wood storage problem had been solved, it was time to move on to the next part of the project. Creating some more work surface and also creating a place for miter saw in the future. I still had quite a lot of these 2x2s left from the Woodcart project, so I used these to create the frame for the table. Even though I said I would be also creating the place for the miter saw to be added in the future, I think I have a couple of other tools in the to buy list before that. I'm thinking about getting a bandsaw and also a router table for myself, so I think I will be buying those before I will add the miter saw to the selection, because I can do most of the things that miter saw can do with other tools, but I don't really have an alternative for the bandsaw or the router table yet. While procrastinating on this project, I was thinking a lot that why do I do woodworking? First of all, I like building things and working with my hands, and this creates a nice venue for me to do so and to get outside of the house and do something else than just sit on the computer, which I do for my day job for quite many hours a day. It also creates a nice feeling when you finish something and you have something tangible to show for it, which isn't the case with my work because I just sit on the computer, do things, most of them being intangible, and I don't really see any outcome of doing those. There's also some necessity to it because when we moved into the house 2 years ago, we didn't have any furniture as we had been living in a camper van for the last year. And when we moved into the house, we decided that we wouldn't be buying furniture, but I would be rather building it myself in the garage. And most of the things are now built, the dining table kind of being the last big one that I've been waiting for. I still have some other work that needs to be done in the house and some furniture pieces that I need to build, but those are not urgent because we have something that is already in and working. It's just kind of replacing or making it better. And as I'm working with leftover materials from someone else, this is one of the things that I needed to take into account because the sheet weren't deep enough or wide enough for the table. I had to put two pieces in to cover the whole depth, and for that I wanted to add the support piece for the place where the two edges meet so it wouldn't start sagging. And to not have the shop pieces be all function no form, I did add some edge trim to the plywood edges to cover them. I think it adds quite a lot because it both makes the edge look much nicer than the uncovered plywood, but it also adds some rigidity or strength to the edge because it's solid wood rather than the plywood edge. And if you've been thinking this far that how the hell am I going to put a miter saw on this table, don't worry, I will be building a second table, bit longer than this, but otherwise exactly the same, and leave a gap between them so then I can put the miter saw in between the tables. But before I can put the other table in, I need to do some cleanup, move the workbench elsewhere, all the scrap wood pieces, and also move the other shelf that I had to fit the other table because it was quite long. And you can see that spring is finally arriving to Finland as well, because now when it's sunny and the heating is still on in the shop, it is getting quite warm when you are working on something. Hence me just being on a t-shirt, even though there's still some snow outside and it's below zero. And now that the other table was on its place, I can see that I had created quite of a mess that I needed to clear out before I could start actually working in the shop. And to do that, I needed to start working on the tool wall to create a place for all the tools to clear out the mess that I had made. I will be using French cleats to create the tool wall, and to begin with I started by adding a couple of these sheets on the wall, just screwing those into the studs in the wall. For that I had my wife come and help me to make sure that the sheets are level on the wall, to not have the whole tool wall being wonky and the tools rolling down. I found that the easiest way to do the French cleats was to first cut these wider strips of the plywood and then cutting those at a 45-degree angle from the middle, so then I would have two pieces at the same time, and if I had any pieces left over I would use those as the pieces that I would attach to the individual storage things that I would be putting on the wall. And if anyone's interested, my strips are 5 centimeters or 2 inches wide, and I think those are plenty strong to hold quite a lot of weight. Then, for whatever reason, to work a bit backwards, I would say I started working on storage for the clamps, even though the clamps were still hanging on the wall, and I had plenty of other tools laying on the tables and on the table saw and elsewhere in the shop. But I just got these, well, not triangles since they have 4 corners, but triangle looking things, and hooked those up to have them hanging on the wall. And at some point I realized that I actually needed a bit more space on the wall, so I attached a new sheet on the wall and I would create the clamp storage on that. Eventually I had a place for all the tools on the wall. I won't be showing you how I made each of these individually, but they are pretty basic, just plywood with brad nails and some glue. I also added some strips of wood under the tables that I made to hold the boxes for all the Makita tools that had boxes for them. But yeah, overall I think taking a few months break from the shop was quite nice. I had some newfound motivation and finally made it back to start working on the shop furniture that I had in my to-do list for quite a long time. And at the end of it all, I really like how the shop is now. There are still some modifications needed, new equipment, and with that probably some new storage solutions as well. But overall, it's a really nice place to be working at now. And if you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.